Okay, solving quadratic equations. So the whole idea behind solving quadratic equations is once this is in factored form, technically in order for this equation to be equal to 0, this entire expression would be equal to 0. So because 0 times anything would give me 0. Or this entire expression would equal 0, being 0 times anything would also give me 0. So once you have your quadratic in factored form, we can simply take each expression, make it equal to 0, and solve for x. So now this becomes a simple linear equation. So I'm going to move 3 to the other side by subtracting 3 and divide by 2. Here I'm just going to simply move 1 to the other side. So my solutions would be x equals -3/2 and x equals 1. And those would be the solutions. So in order to solve quadratic equations by factoring is you first have to make your equation equal to 0, 2, factor the equation, 3, make each factor equal to 0, and then solve for x. So this first equation, there is no c value, so this is just simply taking out a greatest common factor. So I'm going to factor out a 4x, and I'm left with an x plus 5 equals 0. So these are my two factors, 4x and an x plus 5. So that means 4x could equal 0, so could an x plus 5 equal 0. So very basic, I'm going to divide by 4. My solution would be x equals 0. My other solution would be x equals -5. And those would be my solutions to my quadratic equation. Okay, moving on to number 2. This is a trinomial with an a value of 1, so I just have to consider the factors of 16 that add together to give me a 10, and that would be an x plus 8 times an x plus 2 equals 0. I'm going to make both equations equal to 0, or both factors equal to 0, and then solve for x. So my x value here would be a -8. My x value here would be a -2. So my solutions would be a -2 and a -8. It's that simple. Okay, so let's move on. I'm going to skip 3 and 4, and I'm going to move down to where we have an a value of 3. So let's look at question number 6. The very first step before you start to factor is you have to make your equation equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. Using my lucky method, I'm going to factor this. This would be a 3x and a 1x. I'm thinking this needs to be a 1 and an 8. So 24x, because this is a minus, I'm thinking subtraction in my head. 24 minus 1. 24 minus 1 is 23. But I wanted a -23, so that would mean my negative would have to go with my 8, and a positive would go with my 1. So my factors are 3x plus 1 and an x minus 8 equals 0. I'm going to take each factor, make it equal to 0, and solve for x. So I get a 3x equals a -1, x equals -1/3, and then my other solution is going to be x equals 8. And that's factoring, solving by factoring.